I want to thank you so much for spending the time with us and coming in. You know, it's always a pleasure to be able to see you and spend a little bit of time. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more about your farm.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for inviting us to participate in this event. It's been really heartwarming, people reaching out and doing these sorts of Zoom events to keep the cheese community kind of communicating and letting everyone know that we're still here and talk about all of the great cheese that we're still making. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sheila Flanagan. I am, I guess, the head cheesemaker and bottle washer at Nettle Meadow Farm and Cheese Company in the Southern Adirondacks in upstate New York. We are a 55-acre farm that works with 11 other farm families. So we're encompassing about almost 300 acres now of pasture for our goat, sheep, and cows for our mixed milk cheeses. Nettle Meadow originally started in 1990. In 2005, my partner Lorraine and I bought the farm and started expanding it and building our cheese repertoire. Kunik has always been our flagship cheese, and we have been making it with great success over the years. It's a triple creme goat's milk with cow cream that we will get to in a little bit here.
What's the first cheese that you want to taste?
Well, I think that the Kunik, even though it is kind of the superstar, the rock star of our grouping here, it's still a really nice place to start because you get all of those, you know, nice, fresh yet mushroomy flavors, and you have the. Unfortunately, I was running late to get here, so mine is still a little dense, but it's a very creamy texture when left out to sit for an hour or so at room temperature. I like to call it.
Mine's been sitting out for about an hour now. I've had a chance to kind of play with them a little bit.
I like to call it a buttery like triple creme with a goat kick. And the nice thing, isn't that pretty?
That is. That's got a lot of nice separation to it. I love the smell, that wonderful fresh button mushroom smell of the cheese as well. This is absolutely just such a pleasure to cut as well.
And it was really that kind of that mushroom undertone of the cheese that made us terrified of thinking about moving our facility anywhere else. But we were lucky enough to find this old Dude Ranch dining hall that has this giant cellar made out of the exact same stones as our current aging cellar. So that we can really keep the consistency and the aromas of all of our aged cheeses, which was super important to us.
So tell us about some of the awards and, you know, a little bit more about the quality of the styles of milk here.
Okay, so the Kunik is essentially the goat's milk, and that's from our herd that, you know, is leased to farm families. A lot of, because it's a mixed herd, you know, for people that have dogs, it's basically what you call the American breed, which is kind of the mixture of animals. And so there's a lot of funny looking goats that belong to us that have partial ears like the La Manchas, which La Manchas are very well known for being a high butterfat goat, and Nubians, which are a little frail sometimes, both mentally and physically. But when mixed with a stronger animal like a Saanen or a boar goat, then you get some of that genetic vigor from the Saanen and the boar, but you get some of those buttery notes, buttery goat milk notes of the La Manchas and the Nubians. So we try to make sure that there's a nice balance of our herd. We're not trying to create any show goats, but we want goats that are both hardy and can handle living with a group of, maybe 40 or 50 other goats, and that can produce goat's milk that still has that high butterfat quality. And then the cow cream is just a lovely cow cream from a combination of a local dairy farm and then some of our own Jersey girls. And so those are really the milk and cream components of the cheese. People often ask me percentage-wise. Very easy for me to calculate even at this hour of the day for me, because we make the Kunik in 100-gallon batches, which for many of you probably sounds tiny, and I suppose it is, but we do it every day, and sometimes we do it several times a day. So for every 85 gallons of goat's milk, we put in 15 gallons of cream. So it's a fairly heavy amount of cow cream.
Well, it is literally melt in your mouth, creamy. It's got a little bit of tanginess, and one of my favorite beer pairings for goat's milk and that this tanginess is a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, and I've been pairing this up for myself 15 years, and this is no exception. It really goes really well with this particular cheese. You need a little bit of carbonation because there's just so much butter there that it really just fills your mouth of that creaminess, and the beer kind of takes a little bit of that edge off there. And
I always suggest a Cab Franc with Kunik, but then Lorraine always says that I suggest Cab Franc with everything, so I suppose that doesn't mean much.
Yeah, I understand that. All right, so what's our next cheese?
So I guess we'll move on to the Simply Sheep, which is the all sheep's milk. It's a little bit more. It's a little lighter. You definitely get that true sheep flavor in it. It's even after having only sat out here for about 40 minutes, this is very creamy in texture. People always ask me about when should I eat these things. Should I eat them when we bring them out of the aging cave at 2 weeks, or should I wait 3 months till they're near the end of their shelf life? And I think with the Simply Sheep, it's kind of like the Kunik. There's a group of people that just really love it when it's young and super fresh, and you get that sheep, that really fresh flavor of sheep's milk. But then it really grows so much in complexity as it gets older. And the piece I have today, just tried it earlier, it's really nice. It's kind of in that midlife spot.
There's definitely a different amount of butter. It's not as creamy, but it's really has a nice earthiness to it. This is very sweet with a little tanginess to it, but it's got such a nice balance of earthiness to it, and of course you can taste a little bit of the rind, the mushroomy on there.
Yeah, and you know, the Simply Sheep again is something that we've been working on for 12 or 13 years now. So you really get that benefit of the improvements and the texture of the rind over the years, the experimentation. I really feel that the creaminess of the Simply Sheep has just improved so much over the years. And especially this time, this time of year when you've got the sheep milk of spring, that's when this cheese, I find it to be very delightful.
You know, I was trying to think about, you know, what I was going to pair this up with, and I brought out the Taste Elevated, the fig chutney. And typically I do that with the triple cremes and a real richness, but with this sheep's milk, it is absolutely fabulous. It really, the chutney can be a little bit intense, but the sheep's milk just brings it right down into a nice balance.
That's true. That sounds like a wonderful pairing. So the next one, we're saving the funkiest for last, so we'll move on to the Sappy U, which is just 50% sheep's milk. Sappy U is, I always explain to people that in the wintertime in the Adirondacks, not a whole lot of our staff are skiers, and other than skiing, there's not a whole lot to do. So we come up with all sorts of recipes, and 2 or 3 might make it through the kind of the tasting evaluation in any given year. And so the Sappy U was one of those. Actually, my assistant Sal came up with the whole concept of Sappy U, and I hate him to this day for it because it's a very complicated cheese to make. It's a sheep and cow's milk combination. And we add a little bit of cream because we feel that it's just a touch too dry without that extra cream element. And we also infuse it with some local maple. The town in the Adirondacks where our farm is the, I guess, the largest producer of maple in upstate New York. So we try to do a lot of things with maple. We make a cranberry chev with maple, and we make a maple chev, and certainly we make this cheese, which is a slight maple reduction, which brings out a little bit more of the sugars, and then that helps to tamp down some of the sour elements that you can find in sheep milk when you age it out over a long period of time. And then we pat it down with vegetable black ash. And the concept of the cheese is it's supposed to be all things borealis, of the borealis forest. So in the area where we are now, most of the dairy families a century and a half ago were sheep families that also used wool and other components. So sheep were, and also because it's such a stony, difficult geology for cows, and goats were not that prevalent, people had a lot of sheep. And the maple, obviously, because it's a huge maple area. And then the black ash, we'd hoped to do a pine ash because there's so much pine in our region, but it's just difficult from the third party auditing, food safety standpoint to get a consistent amount of pine ash all the time to use. So we've kind of fallen back on the vegetable black ash. So that is the Sappy U.
So how long is this aged?
We age it for about 4 to 5 weeks before we send it out. It's kind of like a hybrid, moving towards it's a little less of a bloomy rind, moving more towards a little bit more towards an aged cheese, and it's also a little denser cheese.
How long do you think you could age this out?
Oh, we've aged it. Usually we put a best by of about 4 months on it, but we've aged it out at 6 to 7 months. And we have a stash of it that we age a little bit longer, that people come to our store to buy because they know that we hold a little bit back, which is specialized. You know, the thing that ages with the least beauty, shall I say, is actually the black ash, as it starts to change colors a little bit. And so it's not as pretty as a young Sappy U, but it's certainly very delicious as it ages, and creamier.
Yeah, it really shows the maple in there. But what's
Mhm.
really surprising is um, how dense this cheese is. This is a great snacking cheese for just, you know, pulling out a cheese and just sitting there. And you know, a lot of people worry about the properness of bringing out bloomy rind sometimes. You know, it's like, oh, it's an event with a bloomy rind.
Right,
This
right,
you don't have to have an event. You just have to, you know, crack open a beer or go open a bottle of wine, and this is amazing flavor
great.
character.
Well, thank you. Yes, we have tried in the last few years to come out with a few more durable options, more economical and more durable, so that people don't have to feel like every bloomy rind has to be a fancy cheese. Because we're certainly not fancy cheesemakers, so we don't want people to feel like our cheeses are fancy. And
All
there was
right.
one thing, while I was
Yeah.
talking about the Sappy, I realized that I forgot to mention about the Simply Sheep, which is important just from a knowledge standpoint. The Simply Sheep is actually made with a thistle rennet, so it's a little different. It's one of the reasons why I'm so proud of the flavor being so moderate, is that that it's an all thistle rennet cheese. So that's a little bit more unusual in American cheeses. More and more people are using thistle rennet, but it's still not the norm.
Uh, well, again, you know, what makes it most appropriate for the style of cheese, you know, dictates that. So I
Sure.
think that's a great thing to do. All right, our last cheese.
All right, so our last cheese is our funkiest cheese, most flavorful, and that is the Amber Kunik. And the Amber Kunik and the Kunik, I think that these two wheels that I have out on my board today were made on the same day, the same batch of cheese. And the thing that I find the coolest about bringing Kunik and Amber Kunik to a tasting is that they really show how much of cheese isn't about the maker, but about the affinage and the care that is taken with the cheese while it's aging. Because you have the bloomy cheese, which has been sprayed with Penicillium candidum and turned and cared for in the bloomy cave. And then you've got the identical cheese, which has been washed in a combination of whey and Adirondack ale, and then whey and Adirondack bourbon, and then just washed and washed until it gets this really funky flavor. But it also, when you break the cheeses open and look at them, they're also very different from the standpoint of the interior as well, because texturally, the regular bloomy Kunik is, even though it's creamy, it's got almost kind of a fluffy component to it, whereas the Amber Kunik is extremely dense, even truly dense cheese that is still creamy, and it almost has a velvety texture to it. So I love to show them off because the flavor profile is so different, but so is the textural profile. And it's, I think, really remarkable from like a scientific standpoint when you think that it's the same cheese made on the same day.
Usual. You know, when you think about wash drying, a lot of times, you know, you think about this intensity of it. This is a little earthy, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a distinct maple-ish sweetness that is incredible.
Yeah, I think that the bourbon lends that to it over time. And it does. It takes patience. There is no rushing a washed rind cheese that isn't ready yet.
And the amount of flavor for this little tiny cheese is amazing. I would, you know, expect this to be you know, a much larger cheese, but the flavor is very deep. There's a lot of layers of flavor and creaminess, and I have to say that I think that a lot of people that might have maybe not a great experience with a wash drying, trying this would be a very positive experience. There's just such a sweetness in this cheese, and you know, not overpowering. There's no, you know, negative flavors. It's not barnyardy. It doesn't have any of that. It just has a real interesting earthiness to it.
Yeah, well, thank you. And, you know, I think a lot of that too has to do with my own, I kind of have some wash drying trepidation of my own. And so I try to make it, I've really tried hard to keep the Amber Kunik something that's approachable for, I don't know if I'd say the majority of people that enjoy cheese, but a greater spectrum than some of the really strong, super unctuous wash drying cheeses.
Yeah. I want to thank you again for coming out. I want to thank everybody for showing up, and you know, hopefully you'll see us basically 4 o'clock all through the month, American Cheese Month. It's, you know, come on board, and you know, we'll do this every single day, and bring your favorite cocktail. I am. All right.
That's fantastic. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.